ancient times when people gathered together in towns, gradually built up their livelihood, it was absolutely necessary to build a wall around that city, because if they didn't, they made themselves sitting ducks for people nearby to come and plunder that city. And people are like that in some ways. We need boundaries around our lives for safety. And if those boundaries are broken down or infringed in some way, if we don't learn to set boundaries in our life, we can find ourselves in very, very difficult situations.
It was not difficult to write, but it was difficult to remember. It comes all over again. All those memories. My name is Polina. I'm from Moldova. Did you ever hear about Moldova? It was a part of Soviet Russia, but now it is so-called an independent state. It used to be a nice and beautiful place, very green, a lot of grapes and wine. People were very friendly. They were not rich, but they were merry. They used to visit each other, to make parties, to celebrate all the birthdays, all the weddings, you know. Everybody liked each other. There were no borders between nationalities. There were not borders between races or religions. And all of a sudden, perestroika came. We thought that we are really free now, that it will bring us a lot of happiness, you know. People can openly speak now, you know, because before we couldn't just speak all these things we have here in our heads. And we thought that we have a lot of opportunities now, you know.
One of the really unique things about human beings is the power of choice. And that is something sacred to every one of us. What is it in every human being that chooses in a destructive way when all the good things of life lay ahead of them?
Everything went upside down. All the relationships, all the friendship, industry, everything was destroyed. Then they said, freedom, you are free now. You are independent now. You can do whatever you want, you can go wherever you want. And can you imagine wild animals living in the cages all of a sudden became free? They don't know what to do with this freedom, but they have guns. And whenever they have guns, they start shooting.
As I look at life, it becomes obvious to me that the universe is set on laws. You see them most obviously in physical laws, things like gravity. But there are laws for the soul as well. There are laws for our mind and our emotions and our behavioural choices. And when laws are broken, they have a consequence in our health, in our thinking patterns and in our feelings that can bring us to the point of despair.
And they start to kill people. They start killing each other for no reason, not because they are white, black, pink, or yellow. They start killing each other not because they were Muslims, Jewish, or Christians. They start killing each other to get their property, to get their treasures.
It's this whole globalization, which reminds me of George Orwell's book, maybe you've read it, 1984. To me, it's, with the whole Big Brother part in it, to me, it's some kind of control, of thought control, and of the control of the media and of the information. Mm-hmm. Because you get the information through the internet.
Filtered.
Exactly, filtered.
I think one of the things that I find quite dangerous is the fact that most people have the illusion, because particularly if they see it in images on television or whatever, that they've seen the news, the reality, mm-hmm. and that's it.
Exactly.
And they don't take into account the filtering process.
When you see what happened with the covering of the Kosovo conflict, the war, I mean, it was very interesting to see the Serb version. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it was just so opposite, which is funny. And yeah. I think the Western countries, I mean, members of the NATO, have done quite a great propaganda. I think sometimes media controlled populations' thoughts.
So what is freedom? Freedom is a sense of contentment where we're not bound by things or behaviours or practices. Despite the pressures that society land on you, that education lands on you, that religion lands on you, that politics lands on you.
Russia stopped giving them gas, electricity, food, wherever, because everything was coming from Russia. And nowadays, can you imagine living without water? Not only hot water, cold water. Without gas, electricity. My family, for example, we are living in 20-story building, so to go downstairs, you can't use the elevator. You have to go downstairs from the 20th floor till the first floor, and then you have to stay in line to get some water. You have to make fire and to boil this water, to eat something. It was terrible. It was, people just were staying all their lives in line to get some food, to get some water, and to get some tea.
Advertising is a very powerful medium. There's been some remarkable studies in Victoria recently about particular brands of cigarettes that are bought solely by teenagers because of the saturation advertising that's made there. No matter what value system we belong to, if it's a political one or a religious one or an ideological one, just to sift out of that what you want to hang on to and lay aside what you don't, and just form your own value system and be happy with that, be content with that, rather than being forced into the pressure of being a little clone of everybody else.
Technology is a globalization of the so-called culture that is, say, the language. I mean, there's one language on the internet, it's English, and once, one, how do you say, if there's only one language, to be spoken, I think it reduces pretty much the
richness
little
of the
difference.
exchange.
Exactly. There's one. I mean, all the other languages and cultures, because language and culture are very much linked, are swept away. So there's one language, which is English, and there's also one culture.
And often it's pseudo-English, because I think there are lots of people who use English. You can't even call it a second language, and they can't express their emotions properly or their feelings themselves clearly in that other language.
My parents, God rest their souls, died one after another because they couldn't stand this, and they couldn't realize that surviving the Holocaust and surviving the World War II, they couldn't survive this war. And they died, just died like this. My father died in February, my mother died in March. I was born in Stalin's time. I was living in Khrushchev's, Brezhnev, Andropov, Gorbachev, and even Yeltsin's time. But none of those times was so miserable and disgusting like those years before I came here.
In the postmodern age that we live in today, the good things of a scientific mindset have not prevailed. They have not satisfied the deepest needs of the human soul, the human spirit. And we almost live in an age of neo-paganism again. And people searching and getting in contact with that darker side of the human nature. That element, that metaphor of light and darkness is very, very real in politics and as well as in the spiritual realm, in education and music, and everything has the ability to reflect the good side of life or become a crucible for expressing darkness.
So we made a decision to escape all this madness. We are lucky we have the possibility to come to the United States. We came here like refugees. We left everything behind. Nice 4-bedroom apartment. All the furniture, pictures, treasures, car, everything. We left behind our friends, and we left behind the graves of our loved ones. And we came here with 2 small bags in our hands, but we survived. Here in the United States, we find it. We find peace and we find freedom.
We struggle our whole life to achieve what we want to achieve, and then something irrational seems to snatch it away from us. September 11 was a classic example of that. The world will never be the same again. And we cannot understand the mind of a terrorist that would do that. I remember too, shortly after Boxing Day, there was a picture in the Sydney Morning Herald of Peter Philbrook, whose house up in Warramoo was totally destroyed by those devastating bushfires. And the caption underneath it said, "I had everything just the way I wanted it." It seems to me to encapsulate the pathos and the enigma of this problem of darkness in the world. And if we're seeking to cope with it, we have no answer against these irrational things that come out of left field from somewhere, that don't seem to have any meaning, that seem to snatch away from us the very things that are meaningful and precious to us.
Sometimes some things may leak out sideways, and things may come out perhaps before one is supposed to know them. But I think this illusion that they're in contact with reality makes people less critical of what they see. So I saw it on the news, so it's true. I read it in the papers.
The problem is, you know, I mean, the news, so-called news, becomes the reference.
That's right.
I mean, it's not like, you know, you're there, you know, as a just a journalist, whatever, and you know, you see things for yourself. No, you know, you trust, you know, the news, what you see on TV, and this becomes a reference.
Yeah.
And the problem is, it's not reality.
Yeah.
It's reality that's filtered.
If I've set my sense of being secure in this life and made that dependent on my economic stability and how much money I have in the bank and the material things in my life, I'm going to struggle when that moment of disaster comes and they're all consumed in a bushfire. But somehow as human beings, we've got to look for a sense of security outside of those things and beyond those things.
Soldiers killed that many people and stuff, and you know they have done a so-called crime against humanity, right? Which is true, but you know it would be the opposite. You know, American people would, or NATO soldiers would, you know, bombing Serb civil people.
It's a surgical operation.
That's right. You know, Americans or NATO soldiers will never be judged for
killing civilians.
That's right. I asked once at university a teacher of mine who works at the CNRS in Paris, and he said, you know, when you kill a Serb civil, it's not a crime against humanity. A crime against humanity is when you kill an American soldier, an American civil. You know, that's different. So that's why people will never be American people will never be judged for that.
The American Civil War, when that was over, Abraham Lincoln passed a law that gave all the slaves their freedom. A lot of slaves that remained as slaves, however, and they did that for two reasons. Sometimes their canny slave masters never told them they were free, kept them in the dark. Other times they'd become so used to living as slaves that they find it too frightening to think in terms of living in freedom. And sometimes, like a prisoner in a jail, it becomes institutionalized. The thought of living outside the walls becomes too frightening for us, so we make an intentional choice to stay entrapped. The only thing that can offer us is more of the same until we spiral downwards into meaninglessness and self-destruction.
I like to communicate with people. I like to talk with them about their family, about their just parties they have and wherever, you know. But in my point of view, in my experience, a lot of people in Manhattan, they mostly talk about business, about money, about, you know, getting richer, just like this. Of course, this is their style of life. I prefer this area. I prefer just to be more friendly and open with people, talking about their families, about their style to have fun. I'm such kind of person. Maybe somebody is not interested in this, but I like this.
Something that really affected very strongly my attitude to international news was the coverage of the Mandela inauguration. I was in the Caribbean at the time, and of course everybody who's anybody in the Caribbean now gets cable with CNN. And so they feel that they're in touch with world news. Well, I remember going downstairs and switching on the TV and thinking, I really want to see this historic moment. Switched on, and they gave about 2 or 3 minutes of Mandela's speech and with comments on it. And I sat there waiting for the in-depth coverage. It never came. I refused to watch CNN after that. Because it just seemed to me that, you know, they got a few sound bites, they got a nice picture of a handsome elderly gentleman and whatever else, and a bit of the fanfare behind it, and that was it. There was no analysis, there was no in-depth exploration.
It's like when you look at Euronews, I mean, it's just little, you know, spots.
Yeah. What's even more scary is, I think, the fact that we can get so used to getting easy sound bites that when we get something serious, we find it difficult to digest.
I have a lot of dreams, you know. Of course, I can say that I want my kids to be happy, my daughters to be married, to just, they have good jobs, you know, they have very good kids, thank God, so, but I have to have dream for myself also, you know. It's not about the dream, it's about the feeling comfortable by myself. In my opinion, to be happy is to have peace, to be alive, to have good friends. Life itself is beautiful, you know, and to be on this earth, it's nice.
One of the greatest things we need to do is to empower people to establish boundaries that make them safe. We all need a safe place where we can't be violated or abused or ripped off in some way.
In conclusion, I'd like to say, the day is too long and the life is too short. So enjoy every moment of the day. That's it. Thank you.
There's something in the sacredness of the human power of choice that's given to every individual that nobody can violate. And even the most courageous person can transcend the most oppressive circumstances and the impressive entrapment. They can imprison our bodies, but they can never imprison our spirit or our soul.
And you know what the pastor said or whatever, oh, he's a rebel, he's some kind of satanist son or whatever.
That's their problem.
Like, oh my God, scapegoat, black sheep.
Well, I'm already a black sheep.
Yeah,
no, but
sometimes I have already been a black sheep as well. So.
But the thing is that to me, whatever the religion is called, whether it's a traditional one or not, if in that particular group or religious grouping or whatever, people are not allowed to think for themselves, to question if there's too much influence of any particular individual, charismatic individual on the group and so on. I don't care whether it's called Buddhist, Catholic,
Okay,
Adventist, whatever. It's dangerous.
Okay.
And so people, that's why people are attracted today to, for example, Buddhism. Buddhism is very, on an upsurge and has a great adherence. People come to Buddhism a lot because it offers simplicity. It offers a different perspective on the rat race we are racing. But Buddhism's basic approach to that is to kill the desire. See, desire is a problem. We desire things, and because we desire so many things, we need to kill the desire, and that will give us a sense of, not control, a sense of harmony in our lives, and people are attracted. But Christianity offers a third way, I would put it like a third way, and that is keep your desires, keep your passions, but direct them to the true story and to the true reality, and let yourself loose. This culture today regards freedom as keeping your options open. And then there's no commitment. Because the moment you commit to something, you're closing some options in your life. And this society really feeds you with this, that wants to bring the craving in you to keep your options open at all times. But to leave your options open at all times precludes you, it doesn't allow you to make any significant decisions in your life, because any significant decision in your life excludes some options. And if you want to keep your options open, you are bound to live a life that has not any significance. It used to be in the past that products were advertised to people based on their needs. It's not being done anymore. Products are advertised in order to create the needs. You are convinced that you are not a complete person unless you have that mustard that came out. Once you buy that suit or one thing, then you will become more whole as a person. And that is your need, that's what you're lacking. And perpetual discontent is a basis of consumerism today, perpetual maintenance of discontent. Well, this discontent will not go away. It is discontent with the situation the world is in, with sin. It is discontent with evil. It's discontent with insecurity, with death. And nobody can give answers to this except by revelation.
The way that our society has framed the meaning of freedom over the last 40 years has been the hippie definition, the counterculture definition, which came in the 1960s. And that definition is one which says, do your own thing. If it feels right, do it. These were the catch cries of that era. Live and let live. And it defines freedom as a very selfish thing. If I want it, then that's my freedom. If freedom is all about discovering who I am, and then making sure that I get what I want and do what I want. And that creates all sorts of conflicts within our society. For instance, if I want to go and trample on the daisies of the person next door, if I want to self-authenticate myself and I just want to have that kind of violence, well, the neighbour next door may not want their daisies trampled on. There is conflict when you're into this, sort of do your own thing model. There was an era when people thought about the other person, and they said freedom comes from thinking about the other person first and minimising conflict. It's what we call morality. And Christianity is based on this idea of working with other people, with your brother, in a moral way, and that maximises your freedom to live. Back in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, there were gurus of the idea of individual freedom. And the names that were associated with that were Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, Nobel Prize winning author. And they had a concept of individual freedom which said that you had the right to do whatever you wanted. And that is the dominant way that we understand freedom today. However, postmodern philosophers since their time have come along and said, look, you've only looked at half of the picture. You've neglected a lot of the picture. And they went back to the same formative philosophers that these existentialist philosophers got their ideas from in the first place and said, look, even Heidegger, the philosopher, recognised that there was more than individual freedom. He even recognised that there was responsibility towards other people. And what they had done is they had distorted this all out of proportion. And so today there is an emphasis on a counterbalancing responsibility towards other people. You are not just free, you do have boundaries, and the boundaries are the needs of other people to whom you have the obligation to respond. And that is basically where people are at now.
The Judeo-Christian religion starts with the story of a God who frees a group of slaves who have been victimized and abused for years and brings them out as free people, and then sets up boundaries that will protect them from being abused and victimized in the future. And personally, I found in my life that this same God has freed me too, to be myself. And I find actually the boundaries as a protection for me that stop me getting abused by the media, people, or other situations in my life.